got into that one thing you really care about? Be it a job interview, a university application, or maybe a competition. Raise your hand. And how many of you have felt that joy and relief when you knew you were going to that unknown new place in your life? Last summer, I felt that excitement. I had the opportunity to go to one of the biggest hacking competitions in the world. The opportunity to experience something new, exciting, unknown. The journey to qualifying was filled with uncertainty, but quickly became one of my most treasured experiences, filled with inspiring people, challenging problems, and unforgettable memories. And today, I want to make you a part of this journey and showcase the cool things that you can do with your knack for cyber. My name is Victor. I am a mathematics student here at the University of Edinburgh. But more often than not, I do find myself, reverse engineering quite a lot of different things, be it malware, be it firmware, anything that I can get my hands on. And that naturally segues into me being into CTFs. In fact, I'm so into CTFs that I will probably not be sleeping tonight. So just to make sure, is there anyone here who doesn't know what a capture the flag contest is? All right, phenomenal. We seem to be on the same page. And this is precisely what my talk is about. In fact, it is about a very particular CTF, DEF CON. One of the biggest hacker conferences in the world also happens to run one of the biggest hacking competitions in the world. And each 4 years, it is organized by a different team of people. In our year, it was organized by the Order of the Overflow, or OOO for short. And this is where the big teams want to get their hands dirty. They want to have fun, they want to hack, and then they want to get drunk in the end. So I will take you through my journey of qualifying, preparing for, and playing in the finals. Look at some interesting challenges and some crazy experiences. And by the end of this talk, you'll have gained an insight in how insane and amazing playing CTFs of this scale is. What cool things you could be doing and sacrificing your sleep for, and how you can use experiences like this to form new connections and learn in a very fast-paced environment. So naturally, for a big CTF like this, you need a big and good team. And this is us. It's organizers. So organizers came to be in 2020. Effectively, some of us had this idea that, we want to play in DEF CON CTF, but we're kind of too small of a team to make a big difference. So we decided to reach out to our people. We asked others, like, do you have any CTF teams that you're playing with, and could we collaborate? And so that's what we did. We took a couple people from the UK, like Crown. We took a research initiative called Secret Club, and a couple university teams from Switzerland called Polyglots and Flagbot. We threw them all together into one big Discord server, and we started playing DEF CON. And, eventually we realized, we really like each other, so let's just continue playing CTFs from now on. We came up with a name, we called ourselves the Organizers, we got our logo, and we were ready to roll. Unfortunately, in 2020, we did not qualify for DEF CON CTF. Well, shit, we thought. There's always next year, and so our challenge number 1 was to qualify for DEF CON CTF finals in 2021. And you may be wondering, how the hell do you qualify for DEF CON finals? And there are usually 2 ways. Each year, the organizing committee will pick out 3 or 4 CTFs hosted by other teams that will be pre-qualifier events. So if you happen to get first place in those, you automatically get a spot in the finals. The other way is to play in the official qualifier event. Now, unfortunately for us, we got beaten in all the 4 pre-qualifier events, so our last hope was to play in the DEF CON CTF qualifiers. And what it actually means for us is this. So yeah, it was time for another 48 straight hours of CTFing. The style was Geoparty, so there were just a bunch of challenges that you could download. You do the task, you submit some piece of text for points, and you're on a roll. So it kicked off. There was many challenges, high difficulty, but there was really one challenge that made all the difference. It was a special challenge, and it was about getting into this door. Now, The challenge was simple. There were multiple levels, and throughout the map, there were scattered some levers, like in Minecraft. And all you had to do was to pull a couple of them in order for that door to open. But of course, we're hackers. We like video games precisely because we can hack them. So our first idea is, can we solve the challenge without actually solving the challenge? The answer is no. Our wonderful plan failed, and we had to resort to the intended solution. And I would like to demonstrate to you our very favorite video, which really tells you what this challenge looked like. A lot of the time when we were pulling these levers, we really felt like Kronk from that Disney movie. And more often than not, this was the end result. However, I think the challenge was quite interesting. It was quite a lot of fun, first of all, figuring out what levers to pull and realizing that they're all logic gates. Figuring out that they're all nested logic gates and figuring out all the logic for them was quite the challenge. So I think we had like 15 plus people in a Discord call at one point shouting at each other. Someone was writing a script, and it was total chaos. But in the end, we got closer to the solution. We got a script that automatically solved everything for us. We got the points, and we could finally move on. After that challenge, the qualifiers were coming closer to an end. And we were getting worried because we're up there on the leaderboard somewhere, but we weren't really sure whether we would actually qualify. And so a lot of people started like screaming all the way around Discord and being like, guys, we need one more flag. Carl was poking someone. And there was a lot of uncertainty on the table. Did we qualify? Did we? In the end, we came 13. Now, a tweet came out telling us that the top 16 teams from all the qualifying events will go to the finals. Now, we are 13th, and there are 4 pre-qualifier events, which means that we're in fact top 17. We omitted one single detail, however, and it was the fact that one of the teams happened to play 2 different qualifiers under a different name, which bumps us to 1 place up. And we suddenly get this message. Congratulations, you are in DEF CON CTF finals. Now, I do not expect you to read any of this text, but there is a very crucial piece of information here, which says that travel is going to be crazier than ever. And that is a fucking understatement. So, we collect our team, but before we can actually talk about travel, we need to make one more important decision, and that is challenge number 2. we have to come up with a funny team name. So, you know, we start kind of looking at the meme potential here. We start looking at what the organizers are called, and they go by OOO. Now, the thing is, we go by organizers. If you combine them together, we're now OO organizers. And this was quite an interesting name because it in fact started an internal discussion in the organizing committee whether they would actually permit us to use this or not, because they weren't sure whether other teams would associate us with them, making them think that they were playing their own challenges. So we were causing lots of trouble even before the final started, and that was a good one. So we were very honored that, you know, our humor was respected, and luckily they did let us have the name in the end. So we were good to go, and we could finally move on to challenge 3, and that is figuring out travel. Now, you know, we're a massive team, we want to see each other, and we had this little blob be in our way. So we don't know what to do. You know, we want to go to Las Vegas, to the US, to be there in person for the finals, but we can't really do that because the US is locked off. So it's brainstorming time. And a couple of ideas are thrown around. One of them is, let's just play online. No one wants to do that. Another idea was to go to Mexico for 2 weeks, because apparently if you do that, you could get into the US. Then again, you know, some of us have jobs in university and things like that, so we can't really go to Mexico and spend 2 weeks there before we go to DEF CON. But we could just play in mainland Europe. And that's what we did. We decided that Switzerland was the place to go. We were going to go to Lausanne. We were going to play at one of the universities there. They were kind enough to offer us some room, a space for us to play, and that was the decision that was made. However, you know, we're a fun bunch of people. And naturally, we have a couple people that really don't like giving up. So they start Googling a couple things. And they find out that you can get something called a national interest exemption, which means if you're of the national interest to the US government, you can skip all the COVID rules and you can go to Las Vegas. Now, you know, we're going to a conference, so expecting nothing, half of our team from Switzerland actually applied for an exemption. You know, we don't expect anything, and by me saying this, you already know what's going to happen. OO organizers are supposedly of national interest to the US government. We got this message in Discord saying that we got exemptions, and so half of our team could actually travel to DEF CON. That's crazy. So as we do, we found our way around the rules again. And eventually, you know, some of us decided like, okay, half of us are staying in Switzerland, half of us are going to stay in Las Vegas, and that's the decision that was made. Now, we end up going to Lausanne. We end up enjoying our time there, you know, relaxing, preparing for the competition and all. And while that's happening, a couple of our friends are on a plane going to the US. And nothing sucks more on a plane than not having Wi-Fi, right? We all know this feeling when you connect to that Wi-Fi and it tells you to pay. So we were like, well, they're not going to pay for that, so we wouldn't expect them to, you know, send us any messages whilst we're kind of relaxing in Switzerland. To our surprise, suddenly we get a photo from one of the people on the plane showcasing his new network called FlabGod. And we're like, well, what's this about? And the conversation proceeds something like this. And let me tell you, my dear LTDH participants, today I will actually show you how to hack airplane Wi-Fi using Google Cloud. So someone found out that on the plane, if you connect to the Wi-Fi, even without paying, a lot of Google IPs are whitelisted for some reason. And so apparently you can connect to any Google service from any Google IP. So their thought process is, well, if we can do that, then we can connect to Google Cloud, we can spin up a Google Cloud VM, and we can create a proxy. And that's effectively what happened. So, you know, while we were relaxing in Switzerland, our people going to the US, before even entering the US, are already fucking shit up. So you know the competition is going to be good. Eventually, we all land. we all are in our two separate places, and everyone gets to relax, prepare a little bit for the competition, and we have to, start thinking a little bit about preparing for it. Now, the finals are different to the qualifiers in the sense that the types of challenges you meet are not Jeopardy anymore. In fact, for the finals, we had two different styles. There was Attack Defense and King of the Hill. Now, an Attack Defense CTF effectively works like this. You have a bunch of servers, each of which is owned by each particular team that is participating in the finals. Now, each server has the very same services running on it, a lot of which have exploits in them. Your task is to find the bugs, exploit everyone else, and patch them on your end. And that sounds pretty cool. And in fact, the challenges can get quite crazy. There's actually a lot of strategical thinking involved. For example, in the case of this particular CTF, there were two ways to submit exploits. There was a hidden channel where nobody else can see the traffic, and if you successfully exploited someone, you got half of the points. Then there's the main channel where everyone can see your traffic, they can see what you're doing, but you get full points. And so you have to make real-time decisions about which channel to use when. Is a team ahead of you? Are they exploiting and using the same exploit? How far ahead is the other team with this exploit, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to make strategic decisions about what you do at each kind of tick of the servers. And a central strategy for our CTF was that when we had our server out there somewhere, we were quite bad at exploiting people. We couldn't figure out the exploits as much, but fortunately for us, a lot of the people did use the main channel. So one strategical thing to do was to analyze the traffic and steal the exploit, try to patch it, and then just reroute the exploit the other way around. So a lot of our time was spent on something like this. We were just taking other people's exploits, and it actually gained us quite a lot of points. Now, the second style of challenges that we had was, of course, King of the Hill. And King of the Hill was a fun one, because it's very different to Attack Defense. All you have to do is to solve a task by providing the best solution. So what is the best solution? Well, depending on what you're doing, for example, if you have a shellcoding challenge, your solution is better than someone else's if your shellcode is shorter. So as long as you spit shorter shellcode than a different team, you're the king of the hill, you're getting the most points. And that's kind of how it works. Now, we kind of prepare for it. We write a lot of scripts. We have different traffic analyzers all over the place. We're ready. And so the countdown starts. We are sitting there, we're ready for the finals. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Captain's meeting. Apparently the CTF doesn't start because the infrastructure is looking something like this. So we get on a captain's call and we're told by one of the organizers, effectively something along those lines. Everything's fucked, the infrastructure is down, this Discord call is happening from a tethered connection on my phone. Good start to a good CTF. Now to top it all off, some of the challenges actually got leaked beforehand. So we could spend our time, reverse engineering them and finding all the bugs. But then they told us that there is no guarantee that those challenges will actually be released. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. So it was up to us whether we want to spend time on it or not. So the start was great. But not all of the challenges were leaked. And in the end, a lot of them were quite a lot of fun. The first one I would like to talk about was a King of the Hill style challenge that was called Show Your Shell. It was quite simple. All you had to do was to submit shellcode that read out a file which had some sort of secret in it. And if you did that successfully, you gained points. But there was a catch. There were a couple rules to what your shellcode could do. First of all, you had a set of blocked bytes. If your shellcode used any of these bytes, it would not be accepted. So you had to kind of think about, okay, so we have to craft shellcode without using any of these bytes in the block list. Now, in order for your shellcode to actually pass some other checks, if you had another team who had their shellcode out there, they were the king of the hill, then in order for your shellcode to be accepted, either you had to provide a shellcode that used less unique bytes than that team. For example, if that team happened to use OX42, 44, and 59, if you use OXAB and FF, then you have less unique bytes, your shellcode is accepted. Alternatively, as long as you use one byte that is different to what everyone else is using, you also pass the check. So now, if your shellcode passed, you were added to the king of the hill, you were gaining points, and any bytes that the previous team used but you didn't use was now added to the blocked list. As you can imagine, it gets quite crazy because the block list just starts growing really, really fast. And it piles up, and to top it all off, you could use 3 different architectures. So as long as your shellcode ran on one of these 3, you were good to go. So not only do you have to worry about what bytes to use, but you also have to make an active decision what architecture is the most reasonable to use, depending on what bytes you have available. And we're there geared up, we're quite happy, we're getting out our super cool 8 unique byte shellcode out there. But of course, there's that one team. It's that one team that does things differently. And they decide to use 3 unique bytes to craft a shellcode that is a ROP chain. And all it does, it adds a couple numbers, it pushes them to the stack, which is an address, and it returns to it. So it keeps jumping to different addresses until it magically somehow prints out the secret. So we're just like, wow, that's crazy. I've never thought of making a shellcode using 3 unique bytes that would do that kind of thing. And of course, we had to make a meme for it. So we wanted to write some really cool, constraint-based encoder, develop a really cool strategy, and then there was T deliverers who were just like, nah, we're just gonna use 3 bytes, go fuck yourself. To top it all off, when we were writing some of our shellcodes, it wasn't working for some reason, until someone realized that they were catting the wrong file. So we were off to a good start. We were all hyped up, and it was a lot of fun. We were having fun with it. Maybe it wasn't going necessarily our way, but it was really funny. But in the end, even though we didn't necessarily do well in the challenge, it was still very educational because I don't know how many of you have actually thought of making a ROP chain using 3 unique bytes, because I sure haven't. And to top it all off, when you read all these write-ups online, people started using some pretty crazy mathematics in order to deduce what bytes were the most reasonable ones to use and how you wanted to kind of map them together in order to construct something that works. So you start thinking about problems in a completely different way. You're really thinking outside of the box, and it's quite amazing. But of course, it doesn't stop there. There are more challenges. And I have to ask, how many of you have played the game Baba Is You? Well, we have one contestant here, a couple others in the back of the room. Simply speaking, Baba Is You is a puzzle game. You play as this white blob, and all you have to do is move some blocks around. For example, if it says wall is stop, if you move the stop block away from it, the wall is no longer stopping you from crossing it. And it gets a little bit more complicated than that. You effectively solve a lot of different puzzles. Now, the organizers were like, nah, fuck that, let's just put shellcode into it. And so I present to you 0 is you, a Baba Is You based challenge where you place a 0. You have to move a couple blocks, and your task is to execute and pop a shell. So multiple architectures are involved again. You can actually, you move some blocks around, and you can switch between x86, between Spark, between MIPS, and it gets really crazy. So we spent a lot of time, in fact, just playing the game manually because we weren't quite sure what to do. I wrote a Python module that did some disassembly to help our teammates kind of debug some things, et cetera, et cetera. But apart from that light side of scripting, we kind of just went by hand. And of course, there was that one crazy team that managed to somehow solve 14 out of 15 levels before the contest ended. We got as far as level 8. So we're not sure how they did it, but supposedly it's possible. And if you want to play this, it's available online. So if you want to do some shellcoding in Baba is You style, it's out there for you. Now, the most important thing that we had happening is also that, you know, we're in two different time zones. Some people are in Switzerland, while some people are in the US. And that means that some of us are sitting there at 4 a.m., really, really tired of doing all these shellcoding challenges. So what do? You're tired, you have no motivation. Well, you start making memes. So every day at 4 a.m., we started a meme production facility. And you know, at some point, we really started losing our sanity. So there was a couple memes, like this one. Of course, we had a meme about the leaked challenges. Didn't get the exploits. And all this replication and stealing of exploits, of course, that also deserved a meme. So at this point, we were really, really tired. And we had some people just screaming things around on the university floor. You know, we had things going on like this. It was really not time to watch the levers. The levers were left for the qualifiers. We really needed points. And so that really brings us to the fact that every day we also tried to solve some attack and defense challenges. And those were quite crazy as well. But boy, were they really, really hard. All of them went under the name of OOOWS. And basically, it was just a bunched up of different services, all had their own bugs. And a lot of them were virtualized. So anything from hypervisors to custom architectures, it was all there. We again lost our sanity with Carl being like, yeah, this is really backdoored, and then backing up on that statement and saying that, no, in fact, it's not really backdoored. Some of them had very unfortunate naming. And briefly speaking, they were really cool challenges in the end. You know, this challenge was a re-implementation of an IXP 1200 network processor. So someone went out, you know, back in time, found some random processor, and they were like, yeah, I'm gonna make a challenge about that. So you're really, you know, going into this crazy stuff that you've never ever seen before. And we spent hours and hours on end trying to figure out what was going on until I eventually found out that, you know, there's a custom instruction set going on in here. This is just some sort of processor that is virtualized. And so we had a couple of our friends, you know, work on it together with me. And I think the biggest hit was taken by Leo, who looked like this by the end of it all. So what you really take away from these challenges is that they're really damn hard, but they're also very educational. You're really thrown into the deep end of cybersecurity. You're looking at things you've never looked at before, and you really try and start making, you know, try to make sense of things, try to reverse engineer them. You know, a lot of my skills were put to use. I learned a lot on the way. In a lot of the challenges, you also had to utilize, you know, search engines. You didn't know what you were looking at, so you start Googling it. And sometimes that led you to some blog posts about hypervisors and how to make them from scratch. So all of a sudden, you knew how to make a hypervisor from scratch, and you had to try and apply that knowledge to solve a particular challenge that was at the CTF. And you know, we just learned so much from doing all these challenges, and eventually the CTF came to an end. But the adventure was not over yet. We decided that we're going to go on a team call because we wanted to see each other. You know, we wanted to chat about what happened, how we performed. In the end, we got 10th place out of 16 teams, which was great. We didn't expect a lot because we've never played in the finals, but for us, this was a great experience. It was fantastic. And of course, on the call, after the airplane hack, after getting national interest exemptions, you know that the US people had one more card under their sleeve. And that was their internet setup at the hotel. So to give a little bit of background, people, there were a maximum of 8 people that could go to the DEF CON CTF floor to actually play the CTF. So most of them stayed in like this suite that they rented at a hotel. Unfortunately for them, the internet at the hotel was terrible. So they came up with an alternative solution. And it looked something like this. It had a router that was connected to some switch in a random spot on the floor. And there was some cable management going on. For some reason, it went all the way to the bathroom, where there was another switch that then happened to be connected to a phone. And what the hell do you think phones have to do with this all? Well, the internet is bad. They found out that tethering your connection through like 4G was much better than what the hotel had to offer. But the signal was very bad unless you were in the bathroom. So you place your phone on a wireless charger in the bathroom, you let it sit there, you connect it to a couple switches, to a couple routers, and suddenly you've got semi-decent Wi-Fi. So the CTF ends. We eventually all return to Zurich. We meet up, we chat, we have fun, we process what happened. And the takeaways are really that CTFs are really exciting. They're really fun, they're amazing experiences. You never know what you're gonna get. I never expected that we were gonna be of national interest to the US government. I never expected someone to hack the airplane Wi-Fi. And neither did I expect the terrible cable management that we just saw in the video out there. And they're also very educational. You're thrown into such a deep end, looking at things you've never seen before. And of course, the challenges are fun. At some point, you're playing a video game and pulling levers, but in fact, it's all logic gates, and you can, take it out to the abstract. You can start thinking outside of the box, and you can start solving these challenges in new ways that you've never thought of before. And you start learning so many things, going out to blog posts. It really forces you to embrace all the information that's out there. And I think the most valuable thing of them all is that they're friendship forming. You get a bunch of people that are really, really interested in a lot of different things. They hack different types of software, different types of hardware. You have a composition of just really cool people that you can make friends with, that you can take away a lot of knowledge from and exchange information with. And it's just so exciting and mind-blowing. So, those are the takeaways. But there's still one more thing, one more story that remained after the CTF. And I don't know how many of you have read the abstract, but were any of you curious what the special cucumber in it is about? Because cucumbers have something to do with DEF CON CTF. And now the story goes like this. Effectively, my friend told me that getting vegetables in Las Vegas is close to impossible. So he got very desperate. And at the end of it all, when he returned to Zurich, he told me that, the first thing I did when I came here was to go to a store and I bought a cucumber. And on that note, it really makes me happy that you're all here. You can clearly see that, you have the excitement and the willingness to learn and the want to kind of experience these types of crazy things. So I suggest that you go out and play CTFs, you go out and have fun, you meet these people, and you learn a lot. And remember, if you ever go to Vegas, bring your vegetables. Do you have any questions from the audience? Ooh, I wonder if I can throw this thing at you. I'm not sure if that's going to reach, but... Woo! Maybe not.
Hello? Testing.
Ooh, let's see, it started around the age of 15, so 7 years? On and off though, quite a lot of it was in university, so I'm currently in 3rd year. So the last 2 years have been very intense in that regard. But yeah, just on and off the past 7 years. Ooh, do you want the mic or?
Do you have any recommendations on how to find the team?
Ooh, that's a good question actually. I would say that It's really about going out to communities online. Lots of these CTF teams, they just play online. You know, eventually, as you play more, you start meeting people, and you might start getting invited to certain teams. So it's, on one hand, it's just showing that you have the enthusiasm, you know, learning new things, and then someone will take you on. I think online communities are number one for that, because that's where everyone is sitting. You know, when we're playing CTFs, we're all connected. So get out there, you know, start chatting to people, get to know them, and that's you know, that's how organizers were formed. We were just a bunch of people that were like, hey, we want to play DEF CON, and then it all of a sudden turned into a massive team. So it's really about chatting to others and finding people with similar interests. Yeah.
So what kind of job are you going to be looking for when you graduate?
Well, my interest is in malware, so threat intelligence, malware reverse engineering, and that's what I've been focusing on throughout my university life. So that's kind of one aspect that I was looking at. But I've been thinking recently that I would like to also branch out to things like vulnerability research, and you know, things like that. And CTFs are a great way to get into that, because there's usually lots of reverse engineering going on, and especially pawning things, like that's always going to be there. So I thought that, you know, CTFs are within my interests. I'm just going to take what I learned there and bringing out to my career.
Is there anything you would say that your degree has helped you with in terms of solving CTF challenges more than like other areas you've done about?
So, which might be surprising to some people, I actually study mathematics, and you know, it's, people ask me this question a lot. Why the hell am I doing mathematics when I'm doing all this cybersecurity stuff? But the way I look at it is that maths takes you up into abstraction, and it really makes me think about problems in a very different way. And that I find very helpful when solving CTF challenges, because you really start, you know, trying to find structure in the things that you're doing, and that's what you do in maths. So I like applying just the way of problem solving in mathematics to problem solving in CTFs. And at the same time, you know, when I look at crypto challenges, then there's lots of maths involved. And so that's just directly helpful to me, because that maths background gives me an edge if I'm looking at anything cryptography. But otherwise, it's really about, I think, the problem solving aspect of my degree. All right. So, you have a question?
What resources would you recommend to get started with reversing?
Ooh, there's quite a few. So personally, I started with a book called Practical Malware Analysis. It's available on No Starch. It's a great resource for books, by the way. Do look it up. And there is basically books, but I know that doesn't work for some people. That particular book does have like lab exercises at the end where you actually do hands-on stuff and reverse like malware that was made for the purposes of the book. But on the other hand, there's just lots of resources online. There's like a GitHub repository that has like a massive list of different books, different blogs, different websites. And of course, I think resource number one would also be CTFs. You know, go play things like Pico CTF. The challenges are not going to be that hard, but if you've never done reversing before, that's probably going to be where you want to start. Then eventually, if you get, you know, a bit more comfortable with those, you start looking at pages like reversing.kr, and you know, read write-ups, do CTFs, because reverse engineering is a lot about practice. You're not going to be reading assembly unless you actively read assembly. So basically, there's a couple of these resources online, which has like a massive list that I would recommend looking at, and just go and do things. I think that is all the questions that we had.